All right, let's get started. Welcome everyone. My name's Namal De Silva. I'm the Chief Diversity Officer at American Bird Conservancy. Thank you for joining us for this fifth episode of our Birdability Birders series, co-hosted by ABC and Birdability to support birders with disabilities and other health concerns. A few logistical things before we get started. Automated captions are available for this webinar. You can turn them on by clicking the up arrow next to the CC icon and clicking on show subtitles. You can grab those and drag them wherever you like on the screen. We're honored to have Christina Riley, who's interpreting for us right now, and Paula Meyer, who will also be interpreting, providing American Sign Language interpretation for us. It is really wonderful to have both of them with us today, so thank you. Please submit questions using the Q&A box. You'll be able to upvote any questions that you'd like to have answers. So if you have things that you're generally sharing, please use the chat. I love seeing all your engagement in the chat, but put your questions for Day and for Freya into the chat box, please. And then upvote ones if you see things you like. We'll answer as many of those as we can. I'll tell you a little bit about our two organizations, and then I'll hand it over to Freya to kick things off and start asking Day some questions about her experiences. American Bird Conservancy works with many partners throughout the Americas. We work to halt bird extinctions, to safeguard habitats, the places where birds live, and to build capacity for bird conservation. We want more people to be able to enjoy and care for birds and for the environment, including people who have been historically ignored or marginalized within the conservation field. We want birding to be accessible for everyone, and we want everyone to be involved in conservation. Birdability uses education, outreach, and advocacy to make the birding community and the outdoors more welcoming, inclusive, safe, and accessible for everyone. We hope that these webinars will illuminate the perspectives, the needs, the aspirations of birders with a diversity of disabilities and other health concerns, including birders who are neurodivergent. We have, over the past 5 webinars, had such a range of perspectives shared, and that's been really enriching for me personally. Our guest today is Day Scott. Day is a certified California and Wyoming naturalist, wildlife photographer, writer, and environmental educator. Her passion for ornithology has led to amazing opportunities, including her work being featured on Discovery and BBC America, in addition to teaching a bird photography workshop at the Biggest Week in American Birding Festival. Though still navigating through her traumatic brain injury, TBI recovery, and adjusting to a lifestyle with disabilities, she's discovering her voice for storytelling, an affinity for birds, and the bravery to stand out and dare greatly through it all. Day continues to find joy through her connection with nature. Our co-host Freya McGregor is the Birdability coordinator and serves as the interviewer for all 6 of these webinars. Freya is an occupational therapist, and her experience with modifying physical and cultural environments, adapting tasks and equipment to enable participation, and developing public health programs helps to guide Birdability's overall approach and her approach to these interviews. Her background is in blindness and low vision services. So with that, unless there's any questions for me, I'm going to hand it over to Freya, who will introduce Day a little bit more. Welcome,
Thanks,
everyone.
Namal. Sorry, thank you, Namal. Hi, everyone. My name is Freya McGregor. My pronouns are she, her, hers. Thank you for being here. Thank you, Namal, for the introduction, and American Bird Conservancy for hosting this. And before we get into the interview, I've got a couple of things to add. I'm coming to you today from the ancestral lands of the Muskogee Creek people, which is now known as Alabama. The majority of the Muskogee Nation were forcibly removed from their home by the US government to Indian Territory, where many still live today, but there are still Muskogee people living in Alabama. And I would like to acknowledge and extend my gratitude for their past and continuing stewardship of the land on which I live, work, and go birdie. Day's got friends in the audience. I feel like I should shout out my mum and Alex. Thanks for introducing yourself in the chat. I don't normally do that, but hey, we're all friends here, and it's really cool that Zoom lets us connect across the continent. And my mum's in Australia, so technology is amazing and can help us go birding with different access needs. But that's a whole nother story. A lot of you in the chat, I noticed, said that you have a traumatic brain injury yourself, or you know someone who does. We're going to talk about this a bit later, but traumatic brain injuries are so broad and different for every person. And so if you would like to, don't feel obliged, but we'd love for you to share your perspectives and your experiences. Maybe you could share your answers to the questions that I asked Day, if you would like, just to help us all learn more and get a better understanding about how TBIs can impact people's lives and their birding experiences. Don't feel obliged if you don't want to. But as I mentioned, traumatic brain injuries are really diverse. People with disabilities and other health concerns are really diverse. And we're not implying that we're sharing every perspective in this series. We're also not implying that Day will be talking for every person with a TBI. These are just Day's experiences. And we encourage you to think about the people who haven't had the opportunity to share their experiences in this series and how you might enable, include, advocate for their participation in any bird or other programs or organizations that you're involved in as well. We also want to make sure that we are creating a safe environment in the birding community, and that extends to the online birding community, and so inherently this webinar. So please keep your comments and questions in the chat respectful and kind to everybody, including Day and myself and everyone else here tonight. So finally, if you're new to Birdability, as Nawal described, we're a brand new nonprofit all about sharing the joys of birding with people who have disabilities and other health concerns. I'm going to stick our website in the chat if you'd like to learn more about what we're about. We also have a lot of resources online that can help you help us share the joys of birding with everybody. So please check that out if you're interested. So Day, welcome. I'm really excited to talk to you tonight. Please go ahead and introduce yourself.
So as what was spoken, I can consider myself a naturalist even if I didn't have the certifications. I love exploring the wilderness. I am a wildlife photographer, and I didn't choose to be a wildlife photographer. It kind of chose me. My picture taking came from just scientific documentation so that I could learn species. So I feel like I've been in the field a long time doing wildlife photography. I'm also a science story writer. If you all have never seen some of my stories, they are pretty funny, but they really are a good way for people to learn about birds in terms of my science stories. And then I've been an environmental educator for a little bit over a decade. And so I teach about flora and fauna for humans ages probably 4 to I think about 75 years old.
Thank you. That's awesome. I'm just sticking your website in the chat. If folks haven't connected with Day, Day's blog is up there, and thewildernessgoddess.com. And you can follow her on Instagram at thewildernessgoddess too for some more of Day's science writing. Day, so how did you get into birds and birding? What brought you to this wonderful hobby?
So I've been birding for over a decade, but to be honest, birds were at the bottom of my list for at least 7 of those years, because I was just in love with plants first, and then it went to reptiles, and then it went to small mammals, and then so I used to see a bird and I would photograph the bird, and I would probably ID it, but then I would just leave it there. I really had no further interest from that point, because I was doing scientific documentation just for myself, so that I can just learn about the general flora and fauna where I was living. It wasn't until 2.5 years ago when I was involved in a auto collision I collided with a herd of pronghorn antelope. And that really began my journey with the personal relationship that I have with birds today.
Okay. In line with sustaining the traumatic brain injury. So yeah, what has, in that case, we won't be able to compare and contrast your relationship to birds like before your TBI and after your TBI, because it sounds like it sort of happened about the same time. But what has birds and birding and bird photography brought to you? What are some of your joys of birding?
Yeah, well, at the beginning of my injury, I could not speak at my normal rate, nor could I walk at my normal pace. So I used to sit in my kitchen a lot and look out the big picture window. And there were usually a lot of house finches and house sparrows. And I used to cry a lot, like a lot. But I remember looking out the window and watching their behaviors. And I remember having tears down my eyes and laughing at the same time, because if you watch birds, especially backyard birds interacting, it kind of reminds you of like toddlers interacting in terms of maybe they don't want to share their toys. And in this situation, it was food, right, at the feeder. And like to see a bird take its wing and smack another bird, it just really made me laugh. Like, I thought it was so funny because I never really paid attention to bird behavior. Of course, I mean, I know human behavior because I am a human, and and we see how people can act, like the good, bad, and ugly. And I found that birds have this pretty much the same mannerisms as humans. And so I found that absolutely fascinating. And so every day, multiple times a day, I could look out my window and just see all sorts of species come in, like the grackles. And I know a lot of people like literally hate grackles, right? But the grackles are really funny because I call them backyard security, right? So they'll come in, grab some food, and they'll just stick around like they're casing the joint. That's what's in my story. They just like case your backyard. They could possibly try to grab food from another bird, but they're just there to see like what else is going to happen. Is there someone to food someone up here, or is someone going to drop some food? And so it was the birds that you see in your backyard. These are the birds that just brought me so much joy.
Yeah, that's awesome, and so wonderful that you could find them when you were working through such a really tough time early on in your recovery. So there's historically been an image of birding happening while people walk down a trail and check birds off a list. But there are so many other ways of enjoying wild birds. You just mentioned backyard birding and the interactions that if you just were interested in keeping a list, you would totally miss all that fun and drama. So backyard birding is one of the ways.
It's a lot of drama. It is a lot of drama with birds. Yeah. So there are like a lot of different types of birders, right? And I'm not talking about just from physical or able-bodied abilities, but just people's purpose for birding, right? I love to spend time with birds. And so I'm never going to go see a bird to check off a list. I didn't even know what eBird was until like 2 years ago, because I used to write all my birds down in a book. So then I did join the eBird community, but I actually found that not to be such a positive experience for me around other birders, because it seems like it turns into a competition. And yes, there is the big year and all of those things, but it actually took away from my experience, or I allowed it to take away from my experience until I didn't allow it to take away from my experience. So I love spending time with birds. It could be the same bird every day, right? I always encourage people when I teach, the best way to get to know birds is to spend time with them, is to go to the same place around the same type of day. Same thing when I teach photography. That's how you get to know birds. Like, they're all different, just like we are unique in our personalities. So are house finches and house sparrows and European starlings, which I already know they are invasive. And just they all have different personalities, right? And so, but birding in the group, you have all different type of people that are there. You have your photographers who just want the picture. And then you have your people who just want to see it enough. Maybe it's a rare bird to say, I saw this bird, kind of thing. But I'm always going to be a person who sticks around at a place, probably a long time or a lot longer, especially because I just love to spend time with birds. That's how I'm able to write my bird stories, just from my observations.
Yeah, awesome. And I imagine too, as a bird photographer, spending time with birds gets you a few more opportunities to take really gorgeous photos that if you just were rushing around, you'd just miss all of those shots.
Right. So like in my bird photography courses, I teach people to get to know your environment. You want to spend time where you're going to be, photographing. If you spend enough time in places, I find that the animals in general come to me. I'm not going to ever chase a bird or chase a rabbit or chase any animal. I want to be there to spend time with them so that they can get used to me and feel comfortable with me to resume whatever they're out there doing, whether it's eating or sleeping, or, I just like to get them involved, know that I'm there, trust me, and then go about their business. So I can basically stalk their behavior and get photo documentation of it.
Yeah, that's awesome. So switching a little bit to your access challenge and birding. When Day and I spoke a couple of days ago in advance of this, she asked me to explain a little bit about what a traumatic brain injury is in a general way, in case there's folks who aren't familiar with this diagnosis. So a traumatic brain injury is defined as an alteration in brain function caused by an external force. But that doesn't really give us enough information at all. So an external force could be something like someone getting hit in the head by a punch, a fall, they maybe hit the ground really hard. Car accidents are really common causes of traumatic brain injuries. People, the front of your head can hit the steering wheel. Sometimes also then like whacking back into the back of the headrest, people can get injured both in the front and the back of their brain. And the thing about the alteration in brain function, we've got to jump into that too. Your brain does so much. Your brain is amazing. And only a part of that is what we sort of talk about as intelligence. That's only a part. So just because someone has a TBI doesn't mean they're not smart or something like that. That's really important to know. Different parts of your brain are in charge of different things. And so depending on where the injury was, the size of the injury and your stage in your recovery will depend on the different symptoms and functional impacts that you might have from a traumatic brain injury. But there can be things like difficulty with memory, pre-injury, immediately around the injury, long-term difficulties with short-term memory, difficulty with fatigue, just being really tired all the time, or things that didn't used to tire you out being really exhausting. Maybe sensory sensitivities, like lights being just way too bright and noises being way too much. There can be difficulty with pain because, your brain is connected to your spinal cord and your whole body system of nerves. Dizziness, your brain and your ears work with your body's balance and vertigo. People being dizzy all the time, though, not because they just got off a spinny ride at Disney World, but just always being dizzy. That's really tough to figure out. There's a lot of different things. Having difficulty knowing how to problem solve everyday sort of things, not big, hard, intense problems, but just really like sort of everyday problem solving, or knowing how to start or stop an activity. This is all things that your brain is doing. And if your brain is healthy and uninjured, it just does these things. But if you've had an injury to your brain, they can be really challenging. So everyone's TBI is different. Everyone's recovery is different. It's really important to know that. And this is a really broad situation, but some of these things will change in the weeks and months after injury. They'll get better. Some of them won't. It depends. It's it's complicated. So Jay, I hope that explains TBIs in a broad way.
Yeah, Fred, thank you so much. We did have this conversation ahead of time, and Fred mentioned most of the things that, thank you, go on with me in my daily life. So I did hit, with my vehicle, a herd of animals, and what happened is my skull did a lot of sliding back and forth twice. And what it has caused is some mild cognitive impairment. Also, and that could affect like problem solving and deductive reasoning, and just things like forgetfulness happens. But just like in my everyday life, imagine that we all get up in the morning. Those of us who are able to stand, we stand up. We may go to the bathroom. When we brush our teeth, and a lot of times, most people who brush their teeth do a head movement, right? You go down and then you spit and you come up. Things like that, I am not able to do as much anymore because I have like cervicogenic dizziness, and I'll briefly explain what these things are. So the cervicogenic has everything to do with my spine. So I have some spine damage, I have nerve damage, and it's all coming from back this way. So that affects my ability to even keep balance a lot of times. Anytime I turn my head, there is dizziness. So I don't have vertigo. I don't have on and off dizziness. I always have dizziness. It can just increase and decrease depending on things that go on around me, like motion, noise, like Freya was talking about, bright lights. So they affect me every day. There's a very thin line because I choose to continue living, and it's been 2.5 years. I make a lot of adjustments so that I can have mostly a pleasant day. Every day is not pleasant. I will admit most days are not pleasant for me, but that's why I just continue to find the joy, because living with chronic pain is just a nightmare, chronic pain, because medically, there is no solution to this, right? Medication does relief, give you some relief, but you also have to deal with side effects. So, just moving about every day, I do the best I can. I often get a question like, "Oh, I didn't know you had anything was wrong with you because you look normal," which I absolutely hate that, because what is normal? Actually, you see people every day and you never know what's going on with them, whether it's something on their person or something in their family. So just getting past looking normal, and people who I allow around me, I do talk to them about me and what's going on, because if we're ever in a situation, I need them to know the signs for me in case I'm trying to push past things, and just I will keep doing that. I have that personality to it's a lot of resilience, right? And I may stay somewhere too long, and I may do something too long, and things will change. My eyes will like close a little bit. I'll lose my balance. I can stutter if I get so excited, and long conversations, and just it's a lot to do with my nervous and my sensory, the system. Yeah, how I'm affected.
Yeah. And so those signs that you were talking about that you might tell people around you to kind of keep an eye out for, are they signs that you're sort of reaching your capacity, like you're starting to get really tired and you want to keep going, but maybe actually it'd be better to call it a day?
Yeah, and I really have to learn these lessons the hard way, right? I think I do a pretty good job 2.5 years later, like planning, right? Because every single thing I do affects the next activity I need to do. And when I say activity, I mean our mundane things like washing clothes and cooking and bathing myself and cleaning my house. If I decide to engage in an activity, just say, for instance, today, I'm participating in this webinar. I am done for the day after we finish this. Now it's possible that I'll go rest for about 2 hours, and rest for me means to shut down the lights, the noise, and to physically hard stop, which I do have a problem doing, right? But the thing is, I have obligations tomorrow, right? And if I want to meet my obligations, I have to learn how to do the hard stops when I need to, because this very well, like if I leave here and go to the grocery store and then come home to cook, it could very well affect my entire Wednesday and possibly Thursday.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So learning your level, like your capacity, and planning.
Yeah.
I think you said to me, everything comes at a cost. Like it's not all just
it does.
go. Like you have to get that balance right, which is really
so
hard.
Like today I can plan, right? It's pretty easy for me to plan, but it doesn't go this smoothly, probably over 50% of the time, because life is not smooth, right? There are some days that it is just more demanding on us in terms of, this is what my appointment is for. I might have 2 therapies scheduled, which I try not to do, but sometimes I have to do the 2 therapies because maybe I couldn't do a therapy another day. And maybe I have to call about just taking care of some personal business, right? Maybe I have to make a doctor's appointment. Things like this take away my energy. Like everything I do takes away my energy, but like, it's just, if I keep letting it build up, and I mean, like I said, I learned the hard way, like sometimes, and then sometimes you're not able to cancel things, if you know what I mean, because someone could just say, oh, like, why don't you just cancel everything for that day? But that's not really how life works, because what if I had an appointment scheduled 3 months in advance and it takes 3 to 6 months to get the appointment? I'm certainly not going to cancel my appointment. It does not matter how I feel. For things like this, I need to meet those. I need to go to that appointment. So yeah, it's not as smooth as I make it. It's walking a very thin line every time my feet hit the floor in the morning.
Mm-hmm. I remember seeing someone who was talking about having big challenges with that balance and fatigue. About they said, just because my diary is not full does not mean I'm available. Like I've scheduled that as a rest day, just because I don't have stuff in there, I'm not able to hang out with you that day. That's my rest day. Like the day before is going to be intense. I need to take that time aside. But that's got to be really tricky to figure out, especially if you're out having this really wonderful time with birds and your body's telling you like you need to go home and lie down now, but you're just so involved. So how birding with a traumatic brain injury, what sort of things do you need to really be aware of when you're out birding, and how does your TBI impact your engagement in birding?
Let's see. Again, it's about me kind of being aware. Like I'm always aware of my symptoms, and the thing is, I've become used to pain, right? And my tolerance for it is pretty high, depending on what it is, right? And so my pain comes like clockwork, like in the different order. Like it's always going to be my neck first, and then it's going to travel to my ears, and then it'll travel to my eyes, right? And so if it's at my eyes, I know I've done too much. And I didn't do hard stops, because there's not really one activity that I would participate in that would hit my eyes directly in terms of the pain, because it's just added pain from each area. So I get really excited when I'm out birding and like using binoculars, right? And so let's talk, if you want to talk about some tools.
Yes,
let's. And so for me to go birding now, and so these glasses are prism glasses. You guys can Google prism glasses. So I have my prism glasses, and I also have these glasses, which, yeah, I am really not trying to be fashionable and hip, but the pink tint actually relaxes my nervous system. And so these are for indoor and outdoor that I see a neuro-optometrist. And so I have these. I also have blue tinted glasses, which does block some light. The thing about these is it's hard to have on glasses in general, but prism glasses and then tinted glasses, and then like to use binoculars. it really gets in the way of, it's irritating to me, right? To have to go through all of this to see birds. But you know what? Sometimes I don't use my binoculars. I just won't use them. I will take that birding experience and say, okay, I see how this is gonna go. I'm really excited. Is there a bench in the area? So now I will sit down at a bench and watch birds. And I've never did anything like this before because I like to move around to see the area. But now I will actually sit down on the bench and I will see what I can see with my regular eyes without the use of binoculars. And then I'll put my binoculars up. But I sometimes don't use the binoculars. Also, I'm a wildlife photographer, so I have a really big camera. And it's a lot for anyone to be strapped with binoculars and then the pack and then the camera. And I find myself using my camera more than my binoculars because I automatically want to take photos when I'm out. And so with my telephoto lens, I will use that to look at birds instead of the binoculars because I'm also trying to grab a shot of them. I also wear my robin egg blue headphones, and I know like in my hometown, people have seen me with these everywhere. Like I wear them to the grocery store, the gas, like I wear them even in my home. So these are noise canceling devices. And for me, these were the ones that I found work with me the best. I can control what's coming in my ears. So like when you're out birding, one way to bird is to listen for birds, right? And I wouldn't say it's a problem, but I cannot hear birds all the way when I have my noise canceling devices on. I don't have anything coming through these like music or anything, but I will slip one off my ear a little bit so that I can hear birds. So like you'll see me with these on and then the binoculars. And then some days I won't take a camera or binoculars out. I'll just already decide my symptoms are really high, but I just want to get out the house or I want to see the birds. And I won't take any tools in terms of for watching birds. I'll just take my tools in terms of the glasses and the tinted glasses and the headphones. I also have this huge, this is a lot, this neck brace. And I really try not to wear it out the house because it's just, I don't like the attention coming towards me. I mean, it's not negative in any way, right? But I'm able to pump air into the back of it, and then it lifts my neck and provides this comfort, and it relieves a lot of pain that I have. So sometimes I will take the neck brace and the headphones, and it's just a lot, right, to have to do. However, I really enjoy birding and I really enjoy bird photography. So I've learned to use the tools recommended to me by healthcare professionals like you, occupational therapists and speech therapists and physical therapists and neuro-optometrists. And I have a whole team of healthcare professionals that over the last 2.5 years have provided me with the tools I need to live the life I want to live, if you know what I mean, to continue to embrace my passions.
Yeah. And so I've got a couple of things to expand on really quickly there. If folks want to learn a little bit more about noise cancelling headphones and how they can help people go birding, this was not written by Day, but I just put a link in the chat to a blog post by one of our volunteers who's autistic and has a sensory sensitivity to sound, and noise cancelling headphones allow her to go birding when otherwise it would just be too much a lot of times with birds making all their noises. So that's just something if folks are interested to read more about that. Day, your neck brace.
Yes.
I wanted to ask you about that because when we were talking earlier, you told me that if you have binoculars and there's a little bird jumping around, a little warbler or something jumping around up high, and you, because of your dizziness, if you suddenly go up to look at the bird with your binoculars, it can throw you off. I wonder if that neck brace can sort of rein you in a little bit on that sometimes, especially on a high pain day, like it sort of stops you doing that movement.
Now that I'm thinking about it, it would help a lot. It probably wouldn't help with me falling. Um, it'll just help me with the motion, which could prevent me from falling. And so like we were talking about like how this impacts me every day. You don't think about brushing your teeth, you just brush your teeth, right? When we're in the shower washing our hair, you don't think about, oh, let me think about how fast I'm moving my head back to wash my hair and then flipping the hair up. Like these are things that I'm still teaching myself to remember that if I do this, this will happen. Right. So getting dressed in the morning is a huge activity. And if I go fast, like I like to, I mean, when I say like I like to, like I'm used to, it will throw off my whole morning because now I have driven up all of my symptoms because of me moving my neck so fast in a short amount of time. And then the pain just like spreads out. And I can't, it's not going to necessarily just stop because I rest for 15 minutes or stop because I take some medication. So I'm really, I'm a slow person now. I will say that in my movements, right? I'm much more slower, and which is pretty good because it seems like as a society, we're always in a rush, right? And it has caused me to stop almost. Like I'm almost never in a rush, which is good. Usually at the grocery store, I never have a full basket, and people around me always have full baskets. And people almost every time say, oh, you want to go in front of me? And I always say, no, I'm not in a rush, even if they have a lot of groceries. I had to learn to slow down for my own health. And it feels really good because I feel like I get to enjoy more of everything in life. If I slow down, like when I leave my house to go to my car, if I'm not so much in a rush, there could be a bird who's not singing, who's just literally right there, right? That I may not notice if I'm so much in a rush to get to my vehicle. Don't get me wrong, I do run late for things, but in general, I really try to pace myself with everything I do, which can be problematic if so I won't talk about this. I am back in school studying wildlife resources. And so this is challenging for me. It's not just the brain injury, it's my age, right? I started college 25 years ago. I am a lot older than I probably look, but the challenge here is everything is so different in school now in terms of the tools available. So everything is basically on the computer and things like that, which the computer is not really my friend anymore because technology messes with my brain a lot, but also, my age has to do with it. I'm just a older student, non-traditional, and then on top of the TBI. And so just for example, in my lab, we have to group up, and I immediately got insecure because one of my cognitive deficits is problem solving. And just like Legos, things that you do with your toddler, right? Putting things in order of color or shape, I have some issues with that, right? I might need multiple explanations and then I can start. So my intelligence was not touched, right? But it takes me a while to get going, right? And then once I get going, if something changes, like if you told me to put together red, green, and blue, and just to keep doing that, and then you throw a yellow in there, I don't know how to continue. I don't assume that yellow comes after the blue, right? My brain completely stops and it kind of erases. So I have my short-term memory is not intact for some things. Also, this may happen on the day where I'm already overstimulated. And so it sometimes, if I'm not as stimulated, I may not have or experience those cognitive deficits so fast than if I'm already stimulated, a lot of noise, a lot of movement going on. And then my system just kind of starts shutting down. And then I don't understand everything, or you have to explain it and then push me. Because your intelligence, but they also recognize that I could completely just stop because all of a sudden I forgot the instructions, though I've been doing this for one whole minute, something looks different or something has changed and I can't go on until someone like pushes me again. So school is definitely very challenging, just because it's just challenging. I've basically took a lifestyle where I was going to therapy and kind of just waiting it out for my neurologist, for brain injuries. They just don't know. They're like, just wait it out, wait it out. And the way my personality is and my drive and my passion and my resilience, I couldn't do it anymore. It's been 2.5 years. So I figured that I would have more happiness in my life if I if I place myself in a situation, and it's challenging either way, whether I go to school or not, whether I'm just doing therapy every day or not, that at least I'm going towards something that I have a passion for again. I restarted my journey. And then as someone with disabilities, I have found so many resources. Had no idea schools had a disability center. Like, they are there to help literally hold my hand through my degree programs. So it is one of the best decisions I've ever made, but it is so challenging to even read, right? To even retain information. Yeah.
Tell us what it is you're studying. I think folks will be interested to hear.
So I'm studying wildlife resources, the wildlife science.
And so going back to school is related to birding and being outdoors. Like it's
my entire lifestyle. Right. Yeah. I mean, before school, like if anyone talked to me, all I do is talk about the outdoors and wildlife. And so this is just something that it just feels really good. And because I've been an environmental educator, I've been in the field for a little bit over a decade now. I'm definitely going to study to be a research scientist because I've spent so much time educating others, and I will continue to do that. But the research side, it just sounds more personable to me. And also parts of it do not involve a huge audience in terms of me doing my work. Right. So I also have to think about, I have not given up. My neurologist does not expect for me to turn to get back everything I had. Like, it's been 2.5 years. So I think there really is no measurement, but if there was a measurement, I may be 70%. And so that 30% is more than likely lost. However, I can compensate with things with all the tools that I have. And so I'm going back into life with that 30% deficit, but I'm doing it, and I'm so happy that I'm doing it.
Yeah, that's really awesome. Congratulations on such an exciting, really challenging but exciting life change. Good luck. I look forward to keeping up with you. And hey, so I'm going to shift a little bit here in the questions.
Okay.
So everybody holds multiple identities, but some it's impossible for many people in many situations to separate between different identities. Are there any identities you have other than being a birder with a TBI that impact your ability to go birding? And could you share a little about them and how that identity or identities impacts your ability to go birding?
So outside of my TBI and before and during my TBI, I honestly, I have experienced racism being out in the wilderness. And the most recent incident was at a public pond in Wyoming. And it was very traumatic. Have experienced some level of racism, right? But I've actually, this was the first time I experienced it in my face, like actual someone looking at me and telling me with their eyes and verbally to their family that I shouldn't be there, I don't belong there. The family, I was walking past their belongings, which was pretty much off the trail, and they signaled to go get their belongings. And it was just like fishing pole and some camping things, but I knew what they meant and their face matched it, right? The worst thing, it was children. So the child initiated the conversation. And then when the dad looked at me, it was a horrible look. And I was pretty taken back because I was walking around with a lot of equipment on me. So this family watched me bird all around the pond. Saw exactly what I was doing, birding, taking pictures. I mean, it was just me. And then when I passed them, they told me in more than one way that I don't belong there. So I was just so taken back. I didn't say anything. I just left, but it did affect me for the rest of the summer. I did not go birding.
Wow.
I didn't feel safe to be in public areas, the same areas I bird every day. That one experience just took away something that I love to do in my town. Yeah. I think the other thing that I get, and not so much recently, is wildlife photography. So I'm a pretty good wildlife photographer, not because I said so, is because other people have told me that over the years. And other people, especially a lot of professional photographers, have like, you have the eye. And I'm just like, oh no, I just spend time in the wilderness and I take pictures. And so it took me a few years to learn the technical side, but I've had people come up to me with whatever camera that I had, taking a picture of a bird that they can clearly see and ask me, did you take that picture? Now, I don't understand that because they can see the picture in my display screen, right? And then people a lot of times don't believe me. And I can't really figure out, I mean, I know why. I mean, there could be quite a few reasons. And race and identity, right? That's one thing, like my photography. I mean, I don't know, most of these people I don't know, but even some of my friends are like, you took that picture? Like, how long have you known me, right? You are on my Instagram. You have seen my portfolio, you see the pictures in my home. And not that I don't put up other artists' work, but not on my social media. If I did, I would credit the artist, right? And so it's kind of a punch in the gut for me to someone to believe that I don't have the abilities to take the picture. And I am reading in the comments because Nancy just said gender. Yes, I was trying to find a better word than gender, but yeah, also gender too, because I identify as a female. You will have a lot of males, white males, not believing that I took a picture or that I know how to lead a nature tour. I used to get questioned a lot, like, where did you get your knowledge from? How do you know this? Or people would talk over me, mostly male, when I'm leading a tour that they signed up for. So yeah, experienced a lot of different levels of, if not racism, then microaggressions.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. It's really important. I mean, racism's awful, and Black Birders Week. I mean, what an amazing thing. And as a white birder, I'm so grateful for the opportunity to learn that racism is real. It's in the birding community, and if a white passing birders want to be allies, like, we've got to step up. There's so much more in there. I'm not keeping up with the chat. I'm looking forward to reading it later. It's too hard for me to keep up to it and listen properly. But folks, Day wrote a really wonderful article for Audubon during or just after the first Black Birders Week. I just put the link in the chat if you'd like to read a bit more about Day and racism and birding. This is something that a lot of white birders don't realize or choose not to know that it exists, and it does, and we need to work harder.
Right. The one thing I would say that it's also in the article, and it's pretty big, that I find that when people get in groups, they get silent, right? The whole thing, if you see something, say something. I think it's absolutely horrible to be in a group and you know that someone has been put down, whether it's race or anything, right? Someone has been put down in some way and you don't participate in calling it out, right? And so I need people in the, not just people in the nature field or people who are outdoor leaders, but well, yeah, and people who are leaders or just lay humans to just, you have to call it out. You have to call it out because more than likely, I mean, when you're in the group, there are sets of friends, right? So a lot of times your friend, you might have a friend that you're like, oh, that friend's not racist. And maybe they're not racist, right? But maybe they like to cross the line to say things and maybe nobody else hears but you, right? It's not really funny. And it's pretty much old to support your friends that you know are racist and bigots and allow them to continue to feed into your ear those things. The more you allow that, the more you say, I'm okay with that. I'm okay for you to come to me to express these things, and then I just don't say anything. I mean, I know some of my white allies have lost family members, have lost good friends because they spoke up, and good, right? Because that's what we need to start doing. I mean, we should have been doing that a long time ago. Standing up for people and not letting people just say whatever they want. A lot of foul things about people.
Or microaggressions that maybe don't sound acutely offensive, but really are really awful.
Yeah.
If folks are interested in getting a bit more upskilled, there's an organization called Holler Back, and they have free online bystander intervention training, which is this thing where someone sees something and steps in some way. You don't have to say it. The Holler Back talk about other ways. You don't have to confront someone. There's other ways to do it such that you create a safer place for the person on the receiving end, and you're doing something. You're not just allowing it to happen. So I encourage you to check out Hollaback. I'll dig out a link for that in a second. Thank you, Jay. Thank you for sharing about.
Yeah. And feeling safe is so important. And we all want to feel safe in whatever space we occupy. So feeling safe, and then I will touch on microaggressions. You know, I am dealing with a lot of activity with microaggressions right now. And I found that for me, most times, you know, a microaggression, someone may not know necessarily what they're saying to you and how it impacts you, right? And so I am going to seek maybe some assistance from certain organizations on how to address microaggressions, because I find myself becoming very upset because some people are actually, I'm developing a friendship with them. And I already know, or I already feel like they are a really great person to be in my circle. And because I don't think they've spent a great amount of time or even no time around Black people or people of color, things come up pretty fast and they're pretty random to me with microaggressions. Just, you said something to me particularly about my race, but we weren't having any conversations about race or music, or like, I'll give you an example. It's happened to me several times. I have asked someone, what type of music do you like? And their answer was, oh, well, I don't like rap music. I'm sorry. And I'm just blown away by that response. I think for two people, I have definitely said something. The third person, it just happened. I haven't said anything yet. And from my experience, these people have been, and they are my friends, or getting to be my friends. They are 60 and up, right? And I think part of it is generational, right? It is generational. And then it's pretty stereotypical. We're not going to really get into music and rap and all that stuff, right? But of course, rap is cultural, but it's really generational now. It's hugely generational. And people mistake me for being way younger than I am. So part of it is that. But on the other hand, okay, you don't like rap music. Okay, I never brought up rap music. I never said anything about it. I just asked what type of music you like, because I love classical. Like, that's my number one. I like all sorts of genres of music, but it amazes me how people will bring up something in your culture that was not even being discussed in any type of way, to just put it out there. And of course, now it has a negative connotation because that's how I took it, because you said it in a very demeaning way. Right. And so it's loaded. That conversation can get loaded. And so I probably need some help trying to address that, because do I think they meant any harm? No, not at all. But just people expressing things like that, just out in the open without, I didn't ask you if you like rap. We weren't talking about anything about a genre. Right. But, you know, so it's a lot of things that happen like that. That is an example of one type of microaggression.
Right.
Yeah,
thank you for sharing. I know there's a lot more in that conversation, but hey, one last question before we pivot into the Q&A stuff. Folks, if you have questions and you haven't, please put them in the Q&A box. And if you upvote questions you would like answered, that'll help me know which ones I should get today first. Day, one more question. Do you see yourself as a conservationist? And if so, can you think of are there any barriers that apply to you in participating in conservation initiatives? And what suggestions would you have for breaking them down, if so?
I definitely look at myself as a conservationist. And, you know, in the last 2.5 years, I really had to scale back on things that I was able to do before then. One thing would be habitat restoration, right? I'm not so much able to bend and pick up and just all the movement it takes for something like habitat restoration. But there are many different ways of conservation. So I found myself probably in the last year finding out how I can participate in certain activities. And maybe they're not, even though I will never stop going in the field, right? So I had some teaching activities last summer with some organizations that hired me to take kids in the field. And what I did was I was very upfront with my disabilities. I said, I need a person on staff to manage people because I'm not able now to manage people in my curriculum, right, in the field. So every organization that I work with, they meet my demands like over the top. They send multiple staff members. They accommodate me. It's just amazing on the time. They're like, well, we want to give you a whole week to do your class like every day. And I'm like, I cannot do a week. Maybe I can do a 3-day class, and maybe it could be 3 hours, but I write my own curriculum so that there are huge breaks. And the breaks don't look like breaks to the students, right? They're like explore time. So I am definitely able to probably do a lot of the things I can do before the TBI. It's just a lot of compensation involved. And then I am actually finding ways to be a different type of conservationist than I was before. I am an in the field, dirty work person in terms of, I am not like, I mean, of course I can supervise, but I would rather do the work, like be in the field because of its nature, like literally in the field. And so I just have to minimize my time in the field or stay longer, or, you know, just do other things. So I don't drive up my symptoms so much that my experience is not ruined.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing all that. And I'd like to maybe offer a suggestion for a word swap. You said that the organizations you work for follow all your demands.
I knew you were going to call me on that.
Accommodation needs. You need certain accommodations to be able to participate. It's not really a demand if it's
no,
just
it's not a demand.
A thing you need. I mean, I need the light on to be able to see.
I wasn't demanding, and let me clear this up. I wasn't demanding anyone to accommodate me. Yes, but they are fully willing to over accommodate me.
That's awesome.
To have me come be a part of their program.
That's awesome. I'm really glad. I just did then see a message from Carrie, who was our guest the last month. Thank you, Carrie, who mentioned that they've never had the accommodation needs that they've requested from their workplace provided. So I'm really glad that you're having the complete opposite experience, which is really, really wonderful.
Well, yeah, and I'm not talking specifically about a workplace because I can't work, in a traditional work setting, right? And so these are organizations coming to me, asking me for my services, right? And me saying, I can do this if, kind of thing, because I think it definitely is different in a traditional work setting in terms of accommodations.
Right, for sure. Different dynamic. Okay, so questions. Thanks, folks who've sent in questions. There's a question here about mobility problems. I would refer you to our first interview in this series. We did with Birdability founder Virginia Rose, who's a manual wheelchair user. Go check out that interview because we spent that whole time talking about birding from a wheelchair. So Day, here's a question. How has the chronic pain and dizziness impacted your day-to-day abilities to do photography and or use binoculars? I think we sort of covered that a little bit, but does photography play with the dizziness at all?
I mean, it does, right? Because in order for us, our able body that can walk, we use our vestibular system, right? And that's everything to do with our inner ear. Also, the weight of the camera is heavy, so that can throw things off. What has happened is I do a lot less than what I used to, right? I mean, I was an avid person in the wilderness, like every day, every second, every opportunity I could just to be outdoors, to explore. And I probably 70% of that has been taken away. So it's always like really important what I choose and when I choose to go explore, because it's a really big deal for me to be able to participate in an outdoor activity, whether I'm leading an activity or whether I just want to go outside for a walk. Yeah.
Sure. Have you got any tips for using binoculars and having a TBI when you're birding? I know we talked a little bit about like if you fling your head back too fast, it's too much. But are there any other tips or strategies you've kind of come across that help you with binoculars?
Yeah, I try to, and it's almost a tip that people can also use in wildlife photography, is I use a tripod sometimes, or just sometimes for my camera, but also my body. I will lean against something, like a tree or maybe a bush or maybe rocks. And I may use that for stability. And so in my photography classes, I teach people about using anything for stability when you take wildlife photos, because I don't like carrying a tripod, even though I have one, but you don't have to have a tripod. You can set a camera on top of a backpack. You can safely set it in the tree, though I would be really careful, on top of boulders. There are a lot of places that you can put a camera so that you won't get a blurry shot. I feel that most of us have a trimmer, even though if we don't directly notice it. We have a trimmer. A lot of people look like, I took this perfect photo and it's blurry. And there could be other things why your picture is blurry, but a lot of times it's the trimmer. It's because we are holding up our own arm with this piece of equipment, whether it's a phone or whatnot. And if you use something else to support that, then you could take away the possibility of your picture being blurry, even if it is holding your own body, right? And then you have a phone, but you have something supporting your own weight. That'll help.
There's so you can get mounts for, I don't know if you use these, but you can get mounts for binoculars so that you can mount binoculars onto a tripod or a monopod. Some people find monopods a bit easier because they're lighter weight. It's just one leg. I'm just going to put in the chat this on our website. We have a page about adaptive birding equipment, and there's some links on there for all kinds of things, including these little binocular mounts that you can attach to almost every pair of binoculars. Yes. And then attached to a tripod or a monopod. And I know there's a lot of different people with all different access challenges who benefit from that because holding up optics, it's heavy. It's hard.
Oh yeah, for anybody. I mean, I've seen binoculars and cameras and even phones attached to tripods. My binoculars are really heavy. These are Mavens, and they're, I think mine are more for like hunting. I mean, they're excellent binoculars, but I use a harness for my binoculars. So that actually helps me a lot, because if my binoculars are just hanging on my neck, just singly or like diagonal, there's more movement I have to do to get the binoculars. And I have to consider that. So me having a harness, having a binocular sit right here, I only have to do like this, right? And so that cuts down a lot of movement for me in using them.
Sure. What about the pain? Like, you've talked about your neck pain. Does a neck strap for binoculars or a camera, would that just make that really much, much worse? Whereas a harness distributes the weight over your shoulders and back, not your neck?
That's what it is. It's having a harness just distributes more equally and comfortable than a single strap. Also, it's the same as like wearing a backpack, like actually wearing it properly. And so when you take off a backpack, you're supposed to loosen up those straps so you can get it off. And when you put on the backpack, you tighten them up. Right. And so I, just used to wear a backpack any type of way, even on one shoulder. And I'm not able to do that. I just have to like use it how it's supposed to be used, but you're really not taught. That's what those straps are for.
Sure.
Right.
Sure.
Is to loosen and then tighten up, and then you'll have more of an equal distribution on your back. Because you're right. Just anything could contribute to my neck pain because of spinal injury.
Yeah. I'm a big fan of a harness because for a lot of reasons. I also just think it's a lot more comfortable for me to use a harness because they sit nicer and they don't swing as much and all of that. So we've got a great question here, and we didn't get anywhere near this, but do you have any tips for environmental educators or bird outing leaders on how, particularly on how they could be more welcoming and inclusive of folks with a traumatic brain injury?
Yeah, I think it's going to just take some education on their part. It's going to take some education, because you will not know every issue or ailment or everything going on with people in your group. There's no way to know, right? But there are some, I think it's some education that can be had in terms of just leadership in general, right? If you just start at the word leadership, you should be able to encompass your audience, right? To know your audience. And I mean, to me, it goes back to leadership, and not just being a leader or put in a position of leadership, but being a ultimate leader. And I think that there's education behind that. I mean, also anyone who's just involved in society and humans, you can see that people may have a physical disability in some way. Just so an example, right, is if you've ever been to a yoga class. I've never been to a yoga class where the instructor is just like, okay, we're going to do this and this is it. They always say, this is what we're going to do. And if you're not able to do this, you can do that. And if you're not able to do that, you can do that. I think that is so amazing. And I have to think that it's embedded in their teaching to do things like that, to accommodate people. So I do think that outdoor leaders and birding leaders could increase the value of their experiences with other people, or other people can have a more valuable experience if they educate themselves on, not only educate, but be aware that I may have a birder in my group that maybe they don't have a disability. Maybe they just can't see that well because they're over 40, like me. You know what I mean? Like maybe like you just can't see that good just because of age, or maybe you can't walk that fast. Or maybe, I mean, there's so many things that go on with our bodies anyway, even if you don't have a disability or if you've never been in an accident, we're aging and things change. I know my vision has changed. I know I was walking this morning and I almost slipped. I really didn't slip, Then I went to go sit in the classroom for 2 hours. I got up and could hardly walk, right? These are things that happen to your body at a certain age. And so I must have maybe rolled my ankle a little bit, right? But my whole body seemed to be impacted from that almost fall kind of things. And so just be aware that everyone can't, you know, you may be birding too fast and everyone can't keep up. But anyway, humans, I mean, someone may think you're birding too slow. So, I mean, you can't really please humans, but you know what I mean. You do need to be aware that people cannot necessarily keep up with the program that you have planned for people. And you need to just know your audience and kind of fill the room and just make the adjustments you need to so that most people can walk away with a pleasurable experience.
Yeah, one thing that you mentioned earlier about binoculars, and sometimes it's just not a good day for you with binoculars. I mean, right, we don't need binoculars to enjoy birds, they're just a tool. So like bird outing leaders or educators, maybe not overemphasizing binoculars such that someone who can't manage binoculars or can't manage binoculars today doesn't feel like they can't participate just because they've got fatigue or dizziness, or their arms are really weak for some reason, and like now you've excluded them because you're just focusing so much on the binoculars. Like you talk about binoculars, but you can also encourage people to be birding by ear because maybe that's more accessible for them that day.
Right. I think that's important. Also, I think that there is some responsibility on the person. So there is some responsibility on me to talk to a leader if I know that I'm going to have some type of difficulties or there's some deficits, anything I feel comfortable with sharing, so that I can let them know what's going on. I think that's important as well, especially since it may not be obvious. Someone's difficulties, limitations, or disabilities may not be obvious when you look at them.
Sure. Certainly up to an individual to disclose if they want to or not in any given scenario. But my turn to share another link. This is one that I wrote for Audubon about how you can be a more welcoming and inclusive birder. So there's a lot, I mean, I could talk about this all day. There's a lot more ideas in there that aren't specific to someone with a TBI. A lot of it's just really general. Some of it's about disability. So check that out if you'd like some more ideas on that.
I do have another thing about another accommodation that I do for myself when I go birding. It's also when I say you can support your body with a tree or rocks or even a bench, I sometimes will sit against rocks or sit against trees and use my binoculars in that way. So my body is on the ground and center, and I don't have to worry about falling. You know, if I lose my balance, which I will, and I do all the time, because we take our binoculars. Okay, I was taught that to use binoculars. So if you're looking at a bird, you find the bird with your eyes first, right? And then you raise your binoculars up, right? But a lot of us don't do that. I sometimes don't do it, and I'm doing like this, right? And I don't see the bird. And so that's just a lot of extra movement for myself. So I am very probably look robotic when I bird sometimes, because I find the bird and then all you do is keep your head straight and then put the binoculars up. So then the bird is right in your vision, your field of vision immediately, instead of me seeing the bird, right? And then I'm going down to pick up binoculars and then I'm doing all like this. That would make anyone dizzy, really. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, thank you. Here's another question. Do you have any difficulty with facial recognition? Another group perhaps that this person knows, another group has a member who does have difficulty with facial recognition and is looking for ways to be sure that she recognizes the guide or the leader.
I don't have an issue with facial recognition. I do have an issue with names. And this is something that I didn't have an issue with before at all. So almost, and this is to do with some of the cognitive deficits, you can tell me something and then you tell me something else, like almost immediately, and I have totally wiped out what you just told me. And I know people, I get this all the time. Oh, that happens to me too, and all this stuff. Of course it happens to us, right? But it happens to me all the time. It's a part of your reserve memory that it's supposed to be that you can hold, you know, while people tell you other things. And so I feel so bad because I could be a part of a group. In fact, this has happened to me before, and you tell me your name in like literally 3 seconds because someone else has told me their name. I look at you and it's not there anymore. Like I can feel myself going up to like, I know she told me this, but I have no memory of it. And it could get, it feels bad to me, like no one else knows what's going on, but I'm trying to be more confident in just asking, you know, what did you say your name was? You know, kind of thing. So not facial recognition, it's definitely verbal for me, the memory.
That's a really good reminder of name tags and how valuable name tags can be.
Yes.
Even just the outing leader, we want it large print, we want good contrast between the text and the background, big first name, maybe share their pronouns if they wanted to.
Right.
But there's so many people who can benefit from a name tag, especially if you have real trouble keeping that in your memory. I know I forget people's names all the time, not because of a TBI, but
right.
But it's also like I feel much more friendly with someone when I know their name. And in a big group, like a birding outing, you know, sometimes it's a bit weird to like get friendly with someone when you actually haven't exchanged names yet. And so I know some bird clubs and stuff, every member has a name tag.
Yeah. I think it's just a good practice. It's a good practice for a lot of people.
Yeah. And sort of an accommodation need for you too, and something that especially leaders and educators and stuff can definitely do, I think. Do you have a friend do you have a friend who can go with you to feel safer birding in your town? It's so wrong that this is about racism, about those children.
Well, I will say that so when incidents like this happen or have happened, even incidents that are not personal to me, but incidents that have happened in our society that make national news, a lot of allies will call me to say, how are you doing? And if you want me to go birding with you, or not just birding, would you like me to escort you to the grocery store? Like, yeah, people will call me when things happen and say, is there something that I can do or accompany you somewhere? Because it does not feel comfortable sometimes when those national events happen or the events that get national attention. And basically, there is less than a handful of Black people where I live. I call myself the resident Black woman in Lander. But, you know, because I live there, you know, all year. But yeah, people will call because I do get uncomfortable because there's a lot of fear. Right.
And do you appreciate that offer to have someone go birding?
I really appreciate that. I mean, you know, the people that tell me stuff like they're really funny about it. They're like, I'll be your bodyguard, I'll be your protection. If anyone even looks at you, I'll say something to them. And I don't really need that, but I do appreciate them offering, especially going birding, because I just love to be outdoors or just going for a walk.
Mm-hmm. Do you and speaking of having a buddy or a couple of friends, do you prefer to go birding by yourself, or do you like going birding with a buddy or a small group?
So even before my TBI, I tend to do things alone. So like coming from California, people think that because it's California and it's just good weather all year, that people really like to do a lot of stuff nature-based. They don't. They do and they don't. They'd like to do like sport activities or things like that, like the beach or things like that. But I still haven't found a lot of people in California who want to get up at 5 or 4 to drive up to the mountains to look at birds or plants or anything. And so because of that, I am definitely used to being by myself and I enjoy it. Sometimes when I don't enjoy it is when I see something very special. Or maybe like when I come across my spark bird is a northern solid owl. And I wish there was somebody with me so they could be there and see that this owl was mocking my every movement. And it's the owl, like the owl right there. Mm-hmm. And like the playful things, the interaction I had with the owl, and I was like, man, I wish I had somebody here to share this experience with. So that's where it comes into play. You know, before my injury, I felt like even though I didn't have any limitations or I didn't need accommodations, I find that again, people have different purposes for being outside, right? So if you're going birding, you know, maybe you want to go faster or slower to see the birds, right? If you're going on a botany walk, maybe you want to look at the flowers more than somebody else. So to avoid, you know, all of that, we have to stay together as a group, especially when you go out with maybe a group like Audubon, right? Who you have to sign a waiver and you're all supposed to stay together and they have someone in the front and then there's a sweep. But I also feel like as an adult, if I want to just stay and look at this flower for 10 minutes, that's what I'm going to do. So to just avoid all of that confliction and confusion, I just do most things myself. If someone asks me if they can accompany me or they just want to hang out, I always welcome that. But yeah, I am pretty much a loner in the wilderness. I am the wilderness goddess. I'm just kidding.
After all.
No.
And speaking of that, I'm going to put your links back in the chat as well if people would like to follow you on Instagram. I do see a question here about information in field trip descriptions to help people know if it's an event that they can participate in. Just on account of time, we have a page on our website about writing bird outing event descriptions with the level of detail that a lot of folks with disabilities really need to know ahead of time. So Day, one more question from the audience. Just on account of time, we'll do two. What are two of the most helpful or supportive things that you would recommend people do if they want to be allies, either allies of BIPOC birders or allies of disabled birders? I mean, you mentioned reaching out after a big intense event and offering accompanying you to places and out birding, but are there two other tips you'd have for would-be allies?
Well, I think people should just be compassionate and kind. Like, we can start there, right? And if you do know that someone, because a lot of times people have no idea. I don't just announce that I'm recovering from a TBI or some difficulties I may have. I usually I won't say anything to people unless it's necessary. So sometimes we don't know what people need. And that's why I did say there is some responsibility with the person, right? Because if someone doesn't know my needs, I can't hold anybody accountable for accommodating me. Mm-hmm. Sure. I've never met a person who I talked to about what was going on and they said, absolutely not, I can't accommodate you, even as a friend. Like, no, I'm not doing that. I'm not going to turn around on this hike we're going on because you're dizzy. Like, no one has ever said anything like that. But I do want to, if someone invites me on a hike, I can really go on easy hikes now. And if it's not easy, if it's more moderate, I need to know the elevation gain. And I need to know if I get too dizzy, I need us to stop and turn around and head back. And I may need you to hold my arm, things like that. And so I really have only built a trust with a small amount of people in that, because I'm the one, I always feel bad. I always feel like I might inconvenience someone. Mm-hmm. And so I, a lot of times just say, no, thank you, or no, because I don't want to inconvenience anyone.
Mm-hmm. Sure. So would-be allies maybe opening up that conversation of let me know, maybe saying hey, let me know if you have an access need, if it would be helpful for me to know that, before this outing or something. And
if they know, I think it's nice for people to touch base with you to ask if you're okay. Right? If you know anything about anyone that they might have a disability or a limitation. I know some people don't. Also do know some people don't like that at all. They don't want any attention. They don't want, but I think for me, I'm new to this, right? There's no handbook on how to be disabled or anything. And so this is a learning process for me as well, is to learn how to reach out to people and ask for help and not force myself to do something that I know could be detrimental to my health, because I am a strong Black woman and I have all this resilience. I really had to knock all that pride down. Mm-hmm. to continue going.
Sure. Yeah. Thank you, Dave. This has been really, really wonderful. I'm just sticking in the chat again for folks. That's the link to Dave's Instagram account where you'll see a lot of her wonderful photos. And here's the link to her website with some of her science writing on it. So please check that out if you'd like to connect with Day or just follow her. The other thing I'm going to stick in this chat here is because Birdability is a nonprofit and we're only just a year old as a nonprofit, we have a lot more work to do ahead of us. If you would like to support our work, helping share the joy of birding with people who have disabilities and other health concerns, donations really make a difference, and any donation of any size is really appreciated. So there's a link in there to our donate page. You can do it by check or electronically. Thank you all for coming. Day, thank you so much for your insights, for your experiences, for sharing so much with us. I'm really thrilled to have spent the last hour and a half with you, and I know there's been a lot of people in the chat that I've just glimpsed. Really grateful for everything you've shared. So thank you.
And can I make an announcement as well?
Please.
Usually after I have these talks, a lot of people would like to reach out to me and share their story. And I love to make new friends and talk to people about things that I spoke about. On my website, thewildernessgoddess.com, there are all sorts of links to get in contact with me, including just my email, which is thewildernessgoddess@gmail.com. But if you just Google The Wilderness Goddess, I'll probably come up on Instagram and Twitter and Facebook and things like that. I really, really love to talk to people, not just about me, but how can we go forward in this society and make things better for everybody. And then one last plug for myself, I will be teaching at the biggest week in American birding this year in Oak Harbor, Ohio. And it is in person this year. So if you're near Ohio, please come out and to the biggest birding week festival.
Thank you. Yes, amazing plug. I will also be there with Birdability founder Virginia Rose at the biggest week. We'll be doing a workshop too, not on photography, but on helping to make birding more accessible and inclusive. So I'm looking forward to going birding with you there,
and
Day.
meeting you in person. That would be so great.
It'll be really cool. Thank you so much.
Thank you from me as well, Day. And thank you, Freya. And thanks everyone for joining us. Thank you, Paula. Thank you, Christina and Erica.
Can you guys say something about the recording? People are asking about.
That will be
recording will be posted.
Okay.
By Monday.
It'll be on the ABC, the American Bird Conservancy YouTube channel and the Birdability YouTube channel, and it'll be on the Birdability website, and it will be sent, I believe, to everyone who registered. So it will be around, and I'll make sure I send it to you as well, Day. So
great. Thank you all so much
everyone.
for having me.
Have a good evening. Bye.